And I'm Jake, and this is
Neverland Navigation Radio,
where today we take a look through the history of a Disney resort. Today we're going to talk about Saratoga Springs.
Yeah, very exciting. This isn't one I feel like people talk about as much as, like the monorail ones.
Absolutely. This is not like a headlining Disney resort by any means. I also feel like it kind of escapes the conversation of when people are ranking their favorites or they're ranking deluxes or DVCs.
I think a lot of people only think of this as DVC.
Exactly, yeah. And that's fair. It is the largest DVC resort right now.
Yeah.
So that definitely does make sense.
And it's usually one of the cheapest as far as points goes. Like, there's just a little information from your friendly travel agent.
And why do you think that is? That it's like one of the cheaper ones? Because it's not close to any of the parks? Because it's Disney Springs adjacent?
Yeah, I think that one, because it doesn't have park transportation other than bus.
Right.
Because the same thing actually the ones that show up the cheapest, with whether you're paying for points or whether you're paying with money, but I'm only talking about DVC resorts, so I'm not talking about like value.
Yeah.
Are Saratoga Springs, Old Key West, and Animal Kingdom Lodge, believe it or not.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I think that the transportation and the convenience of either being on the Skyliner route or on the monorail loop that puts those it makes them more expensive and more desirable for a lot of families. But I think because of the cost, a lot of people will keep coming back to places like Saratoga Springs and Old Key West. I'm a super fan of Animal Kingdom Lodge.
Oh, yeah.
I don't care. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll brave the drive or the bus or whatever for Animal Kingdom Lodge.
Yeah. And a lot of people feel that way about Saratoga Springs, too. I think it's classic.
Yeah.
I also don't think it's as themed, but you're going to tell me,
No, I would agree with that. It does have a theme. It's themed to Saratoga Springs, the town in New York.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like a Port Orleans French Quarter where it's like a decadent, kind of theme. It's kind of quaint in comparison.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get into some of the theming and the history of why it is the way it is.
These are great for families, though, by the way. Just another travel agent
Saratoga
tip.
Springs?
Yes, because they've got multi-room villas that are really nice and more affordable than like Polynesian or,
Oh, yeah. And if you're planning on making Disney Springs part of your Walt Disney World trip, which we definitely recommend because it's a great way to break up your parks. It's a great thing to do on your off day if you're taking like a rest day. Then you can't deny the extreme convenience of walking to Disney Springs.
Yes. And I do a lot of vacation planning and being the travel agent for multi-generational trip people.
Yeah.
So it's like you're going with your parents and your kids, you know what I mean? And then you can also be splitting the price for something like this.
That's a big benefit.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we dive into some of the interesting history and details of the resort, we wanted to thank you guys so much for joining us for this episode. If you're on a listening platform like Apple Podcasts or Spotify and you'd like to help us support the show, then you can do so by leaving us a review. We would love to hear what you thought of the show, and by subscribing so that you can see when we upload new episodes every week. Speaking of weekly, on the YouTube channel Neverland Navigation Co., we upload the visual version of the podcast every single week for free, and we would love to see you in the comment section over there, liking and subscribing the video to help us keep going and making these fun Disney history videos. So thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, and now we're testing out uploading some like podcast clips during the week to YouTube.
Yes.
Just to see if you don't have time for the full hour, maybe you just want a little mini information, you can get that on our YouTube channel as well.
Right. Maybe you're listening to the audio version, but you just want to see a couple visual nuggets.
See what the set looks like.
Yeah, come take a look. Yes.
Yeah. I'm also a free-to-you travel agent. You can email me at neverlandnavigationco@gmail.com. And I assist you with your planning any vacation, a cruise, Disney, Universal. I do everything. And it's free to you. You get the same price as you could get by spending hours researching and getting your own deal, or I get you a better deal and I do deal monitoring to make sure if a better deal comes along before you actually go on your trip, that I switch you to the better deal. In addition to all that, plus my thousands of hours of research and training and expertise, you get free trip t-shirts.
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of, like I said, I do a lot of multi-generational trips. I do a lot of family trips. I've done some solo trips. Whatever, you get a free custom trip t-shirt if you book through me. So that's fun.
Oh yeah, you can. That's a great little plus.
Yeah, and you're helping a small
agent.
business. I can't stress that enough. You know,
you're
gonna pay what you're gonna pay, regardless of whether you're helping a small business or not. So
absolutely,
and I know you guys are good people.
Yeah, support a small business.
Yeah.
I definitely will never go back from using a travel planner, especially I know we've got a lot of Disney people here, but whether or not you're booking a Disney vacation or like a cruise vacation really helps to take some stress out of the vacation process.
Oh my gosh, it takes so much stress off because I do all the stressful stuff for you.
Right.
And if you've got an issue while you're on, you don't want to think about this, but if you've got an issue while you're on your vacation, you've got me as your advocate. I'll be the one making phone calls while you're riding a ride. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. If like you missed
Super
it,
helpful.
if you missed a dining reservation and now you don't want to get charged the $10 per person that they charge you for missing a dining reservation, I'll be the one to be making phone calls while you're riding Big Thunder.
Oh yeah, I've had to make a phone call from the queue of Tron to
it's
try.
Not fun.
Yeah, that is terrible.
Yeah,
we definitely don't want you to be there
stressed like that. Yeah.
So yeah, travel agent comes in handy.
Yeah.
It's especially nice to have a travel agent if you're planning on booking a resort. And this resort that we're talking about, Saratoga Springs, has a really interesting history that I think practically nobody knows about. And it goes all the way back to the very early days of Walt Disney World.
Okay. I got to tell you, I'm most excited to hear about the tree houses.
Oh, yeah.
What a weird and wonderful thing that exists.
If you've ever taken the boat transportation along the Sassagoula River from Disney Springs to Saratoga Springs, Port Orleans, then
I think you'd have to go to Port Orleans to see it, right?
I think so, yeah. Then you go by some very,
which we do a lot because we love beignets.
Oh yes, that if I were staying at Saratoga Springs,
I
would be hopping on that boat and I would be getting beignets.
We enjoy the boat ride from Disney Springs to Port Orleans to grab some beignets, and one of the coolest things is you get to see these tree houses and go, "What in the world is happening over there?"
I know, it's so strange.
So I cannot wait to hear about this because I don't have any idea really of what's going on over there.
Yeah, it's a strange story. It starts all the way back in 1973 when Disney announced plans for a master planned community in Lake Buena Vista.
1973. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we're talking about before the park even opened.
Yeah, we're talking about very early Walt Disney World days.
So after they picked Florida, but way before they opened.
Well,
interesting.
Yes, 1970. Yeah. So 1973, where we've already got the Magic Kingdom, which opened in 1971.
Oh yeah. Yep. I just messed up my dates in my head.
We just don't have like Epcot any. We don't have the Vacation Kingdom, as they called it. Right. It was like really early days. And when we're talking about a master planned community that Disney was envisioning, a good example of what that would look like is Celebration, which maybe we should have a full episode on at some point, but was a town built by Disney as a master planned community, and then eventually they sold and they don't operate it anymore. But it's kind of the building of this like idyllic town situation.
Still a cool place to go to.
Very cool place to visit for sure. And a very interesting place to learn about. So maybe we'll cover that in the future. But this was their first version of that plan. Not, of course, counting Walt Disney's vision for the Epcot concept as like an actual livable community. This was kind of really an evolution of that. and it was going to be divided into 4 areas, which were golf, tennis, boating, and Western.
Wow. And Western.
Which one would you stay in? Western?
I don't know. This is pre-Toy Story, so no, I don't think so.
Boo.
The Western that I know and love is Toy Story.
Yes, this would definitely be
This would
like
be like-
spaghetti Western.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know that I care about that. What were the other options?
Golf, tennis, and boating.
Oh, geez.
And I know you don't care about any of that.
Yeah.
Maybe boating.
Maybe
That
boating.
sounds fun, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Maybe
does sound
boating.
So in 1974,
it's like
I know.
it's like one of those SAT questions, like which of these don't belong?
Western definitely does not
Yeah. These are like high class sporting events or sporting activities, and then Western.
I know. It makes me think they were going to build like a little Western town or something in there.
Next to the tennis courts.
Yeah, it's the ultimate weird evolution of like an all-stars.
I don't get this
situation.
at all. Okay.
Well, it was the 70s.
Sure.
It had to be there, I guess.
I guess so.
So in 1974, they built these townhomes and the adjacent shopping center, the Lake Buena Vista Village, which, as we know from our Disney Springs episode, is the very first version of what we now know as Disney Springs.
Uh-huh.
So we're going way back in time, but that is the area we're talking about. So they were planning on building single family homes, apartments, and condos in this space. So it was going to be this whole community.
Can you imagine?
They awarded a construction contract and they were building these townhomes and apartments. And then the shopping village opened in 1975. And then that same year, they completed 60 of the treehouse villas, which were a very unique kind of they're an octagon and they're like situated around a tree, and the idea of them was that
up off the ground.
Yeah, they're up off the ground. You have to take stairs to get up there, and the idea of them,
I want to climb a ladder.
I know, that sounds so fun.
But I guess for luggage and stuff, sure.
Right.
Okay.
The idea of them was that they were going to be like super energy efficient.
Okay.
Was like the plan, which is really interesting. They're also kind of futuristic, like the inside of them. If you want to Google a picture of the inside of the treehouse, they've got this very new age kind of layout where it's just like circular and not your typical kind of space that you would expect to stay in.
Yeah.
But that was how they began, was in 1975, and the residences were called villas, and they were going to be energy efficient housing, and they also built the townhouses in courtyards, and there were like these green areas. So they were building all of this stuff to create this little town, and then they kind of had to make a big pivot because they realized the same thing that they always seem to realize when they want to build residences, which is that if you have people who live there, you have to, by law, give them the ability to vote.
Okay.
On, like, ordinances from within the town.
Oh.
So they would have to have some control over what happens
in
there.
The theme parks even? Don't know.
I don't think so, because I think that is the theme parks are within the private business of Walt Disney Enterprises. But I think they would have say over like if a park gets built, like parking, things that you would normally talk about in like a city meeting.
Right.
You know, a town council.
I wonder if this happens with Golden Oak.
I don't know.
I guess it would have to.
I think they probably do have some type of say in like voting, but they are so removed from the rest of that's truly like a self-contained thing, and this kind of was too, but it was like directly attached to the shopping center.
Yeah, so right. It's not like it was a gated community. Like I think Golden Oak is a gated community.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Go on.
Oh yeah, we should do Golden Oak too. That's really interesting.
Yeah, maybe a mini episode. I don't know how much information we could get.
Right. We'll interview somebody.
Yeah, a real estate agent.
Ooh, fun. Okay, so they made this pivot and they decided they were going to kind of make all of these homes and stuff that they were building like hotel
Okay. Yeah.
accommodations, basically.
Sure.
So that was the first time that it was.
So they never had it as residential.
Yeah, people never really like lived there.
Okay.
Which is actually kind of interesting that these are built to be like permanent homes, and then it never really ended up that way.
I mean, this was also the original plan for Epcot, but yeah, it's weird. Okay.
Yeah, Disney,
he really wanted people living there.
Right. He wanted
Right.
people living in a community and working there. He wanted everything in their lives to be within Epcot. And this wasn't really that. This was, you know, I'm assuming that people who were going to live there would have to work locally if you were going to live right next to Disney Springs.
Sure.
You would think, because remote work was not a thing. So you would have to think they had to be working locally and they had to be cool with living in Walt Disney World.
Or retired.
Or retired. Retirement was one of the classes of homes. Was
I
like
think
a
that would be
retirement
more
community.
likely.
I do too.
Yeah.
But like apartment living, I'm like, who's that for?
Right.
You know?
I don't know that anybody would make enough money working retail to afford an on-property apartment.
Exactly. But I think they would be. There was this when Celebration was first announcing that they were going to be building, and obviously that has really close proximity to Disney World. People were getting on flights to put in a bid for like a townhome. They had like an open contract day, and people were dropping their entire lives to secure a contract to have a house or a townhome in Celebration. So maybe there is more of a market than we would expect. But people love Disney. People go crazy for it.
I looked at property in Celebration last year, just, you know,
for fun.
Yeah, and you can't get anything under $1 million, so that was probably smart for those people that took the day off to come sign a contract.
Yeah, right? Now they're sitting on money. All right, so here's this big pivot to making it hotel accommodations in the 80s. They transformed it into a resort, and they started construction on the Walt Disney World Conference Center. So you could say this was the first big like conference situation that was, I mean, there's obviously the Contemporary, which was a big conference hotel when it opened, but this was like a purpose-built conference center attached to the resort, and it opened as the Village Resort in 1985, and then later in 1989 it was changed to the Disney Village Resort.
Okay.
So obviously those coincide with the name changes of
including the tree houses.
Yes,
that's always been part of the okay,
that's part of the property. So the Lake Buena Vista Village Shopping Center changed its focus toward Walt Disney World visitors instead of just anybody in the area, and they named it the Walt Disney World Village.
I wonder what they used to have. You think they had like a Publix?
No, I think it was. So I've seen pictures of the original kind of layout of this when it was Lake Buena Vista, and
Lake Buena Vista what?
Shopping center,
okay,
I want to
thank
say.
You.
And I believe it was like you could get like hand-blown glass stuff. You could go to a jewelry store. You could go to a candy store. You could go to all these different things that felt very Disney.
Artisan, handmade goods, yeah. Okay.
But it wasn't this huge presence of Disney characters and Disney merchandise even necessarily.
Sure. You want me to read some of it?
Sure.
Well, I don't. Yeah, it says in the 1970s.
Yeah.
It included stores like the Pottery Chalet, Toys Fantastique, Parlor, Captain's Tower, Gourmet Pantry. It's a Small World After All.
Okay.
Okay. 2 R's, Read and Write. Readin' and Writin'. Okay. And Posh Pets.
Honestly, pretty not too dissimilar from the lineup of things we have now.
It's a Small World After All is children's clothing, just in case you're wondering.
Okay, gotcha.
I was wondering.
So it was like a more subtle
books and writing supplies was the two R's, reading and writing, but it's spelled RITE apostrophe N, and I hate that with my whole
Yeah,
heart.
that's a little.
But anyway, yeah, it is similar. We've got a lot of artisan and small, I guess not small. They're probably everything in there at this point is probably a chain.
Yes.
Okay, so these probably weren't, but actually we don't know. We weren't here then.
Right. We weren't around in the 70s, but
Yeah.
no, these weren't chains. These were like standalone businesses. And they were, all of this was constructed by Disney. It's not that this wasn't Disney. It's just
Yeah.
that they thought that people who were here on vacation and local people around the area would enjoy having a nice low key kind of they called it brown space, which was all the like the fun in the 70s it was like a trend in design to have everything be like a warm brown color palette for like shopping centers and recreation places. So everything was very trendy for what it was at the time, and it just wasn't very Disneyfied in the way that we would think of it now.
Yeah, but that being said, you're right though. It's kind of similar to what it is now.
Yeah.
I know Disney Springs has gone through kind of an evolution. So, but now I feel like there's the world of Disney.
Yes.
But apart from that, it's not like you're slapped in the face. There's no Disney characters walking around or anything.
No, there's not.
So anyway, go on.
Yeah, there's just a lot of Disney. I would say just now a major difference is that there's so much Disney merch everywhere.
Yeah.
Like Disney, Star Wars, there's multiple places to buy Disney merchandise. There's Goofy's Candy Store, the Disney Co-op. The word Disney and the characters have a much bigger presence now. And that really started when they renamed it to the Walt Disney World Village, even before Downtown Disney.
Okay.
And at the time when that did happen, the resort itself then opened up these different sections. So now we're away from, what was it, tennis, golf, boating, and Western. Now we're on...
How could you forget?
I know, classics.
You can't forget.
Now,
crazy.
Now we've got vacation villas, which are 1 and 2 bedroom dwellings, and they were all grouped together. Fairway villas, which are townhomes that overlook the golf course. So this was the golf section, clearly. The treehouse villas, which we know are 3 bedroom villas on top of 10-foot high pedestals. Club Lake villas, which were built later, but they're for people who were going to the conference center, and the Grand Vista Suites, which were single family dwellings that were originally constructed as the model homes for residential developments. So the model homes became these like rental places, basically. So you can really see how they're already taking the infrastructure for what was going to be something completely different, and they're kind of jamming it into this new resort setup, which is very Disney.
Okay.
Kind of fascinating. I would have loved to stay at that version of it back in the day because it's just such a weird little capsule, and
it still sounds so much more like places you would live than put a hotel room. You know what I mean?
I think
like
that was the vibe.
Yeah.
It was basically.
And I guess that the villas that people like, especially for the multi-generational type travel, are like that. They've got a little kitchen and a living room, so I get it.
It sounds homey.
It does.
It sounds like renting a house for a week, which sounds nice.
Yeah.
So the next major change that would come to this property is in the Eisner era in 1996, when the villas became part of the Disney Institute. So that is when we get this major change away from the Disney Village Resort into renaming this entire property the Disney Institute. The vacation villas were called townhomes, and the Club Lake villas and the Club Suites became known as bungalows, which feels unimportant. And then Disney, the main draw of all of this was that Disney would host these different programs where you could learn different skills as part of like a series of classes, and you could have like an educational vacation was kind of the idea. And Michael Eisner picked up this idea from places in the northeast of America at the time that were offering these like experiential vacations where you could learn. You could take like a course in golf, you could take business classes on your vacation, you could learn how to cook, horseback riding.
This is such a wild idea to me.
I don't find this to be something that I can fully imagine Disney focusing on now,
Right.
because of the way that they prioritize offering like deluxe accommodation.
This would make more sense to me at like Disney's Vero Beach or Disney's Hilton Head, where you don't have a theme park right there. But I've never met anybody that got bored of the theme parks on their vacation. So who wants to take time? And I get that it was just one park. No, at this time it was multiple parks. That you're talking about the 90s?
96, yeah, we had 3.
Wow. I just can't imagine anybody being like, I can't imagine many people being like, I'm going to take a couple days out of my vacation to learn how to horseback ride.
Yeah, that actually ended up being the main problem, was that they couldn't find enough people who were seriously committed to this. But by the 90s, it is somewhat important to note that there were a lot of people who were locals and regulars of Walt Disney World. So I feel like maybe if they were having like a staycation type situation, that this would appeal more to them. But clearly it was not enough, because it didn't last particularly long, especially in the
How
state
long?
that we're talking about. Well, in 2000, the year 2000, which is only 4 years after it launched, they kind of changed the focus to be less conferencey and businessy, where they were offering these like business and marketing classes, language classes, all this. They focused it to more family oriented classes. So like you could
That makes less sense to me. Like if a company's going to pay for like, hey, we're going to have our yearly conference, we did great this year, and also you're going to take some business classes, great. But okay, go on.
It's actually so confusing, because there was a time when the program first started out, it was very like, I would say it was very family oriented, because they knew who that was. But then they made this pivot that was more businessy, and then they kind of oscillated back and forth between those ideas and like marketing, from what I could find. So it seemed like they didn't really have a clear focus for this. But at one point there was like this real focus on it being a multi-day seminar for business professionals to learn like how Disney is so successful in customer service and marketing and all of those things.
Right. And I could see a company paying for that.
Exactly. I guess it wasn't successful enough though.
Okay.
Because in 2003, that's when the DVC concept took over, and they began the transition to Disney's Saratoga Springs.
That's when it got named Saratoga Springs?
That's when they closed the resort down to start making preparations for Saratoga Springs.
Oh, wow.
Saratoga Springs opened in 2004.
Oh, wow. Okay. I didn't realize that.
You thought it was newer Saratoga Springs or older?
Older.
Older.
I thought it had been called Saratoga Springs in some way or the other from not the beginning necessarily, but for more of my life.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hadn't been there, so
I know. I've honestly never really known much about Saratoga Springs.
I think I was more aware of the name change that happened at Port Orleans, the Dixie Landing situation, than I was of this one.
Really? Yeah, I guess that makes sense though. Because you went to that, didn't you?
I went to French Quarter.
Yeah.
Which was, yeah.
If you've been to one.
I think that probably there was more information circulating about the Dixie Landing situation because it was problematic.
Right. Yeah. That it was a little bit more sensational than this was. This was just basically a fail.
This was just bad business.
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, yeah, for then.
No, yeah, for sure. I do, before we go on to Saratoga Springs, though, I want to name some facts about the Institute when it was the Institute.
Okay.
They had 40 different programs
I want to see pictures.
with 3-day to week-long stays, and they were ranging in price for the programs from $429 to $1,310. The conference center became the conference center from when it was Walt Disney World Conference Center. Was absorbed into the Institute, which would eventually include 28 program studios, a 225-seat performance center, and an outdoor amphitheater. There was also a cinema, a closed-circuit TV station, DITV, Disney Institute Television, a radio station, WALT, and a sports and fitness center with a full-service spa, and a restaurant called Seasons, which featured a themed dinner menu that rotated nightly.
Wow.
How fun. Some of my favorite things of that are the radio station from the Disney Institute. I think that's so fun.
Mm-hmm.
The closed circuit TV station that you could only view at the Disney Institute. Love that. And I love this idea of there being a performance center there. And then guests had to choose to participate in what would eventually become a selection of over 80 different programs you could choose from. And the categories were animation, culinary, gardening, the great outdoors, photography, television, and youth.
Youth.
Yeah, for like programs for kids.
Okay.
How fun.
Yeah, I guess it's crazy. Yeah.
To think that you would like spend your vacation, and so they
at Disney, not going to Disney.
Right.
Yeah.
So they would have like, you would stay for, the idea of this is that you would stay for a week, basically. You would do one of these 3-day programs probably, and then you would spend the rest of your time in the theme parks, was the idea.
You know what this sounds a little bit like?
What?
This Star Wars garbage.
the Galactic Star Cruiser?
Yeah, like, okay, we want you to come and stay in a Disney hotel, but not go to Disney except for one day.
Yeah, it
or
does.
It's a half day.
It definitely does have that limited theme park
like
vibe.
I don't know that you're grasping why people come here. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm sure that they were trying to expand to people that weren't like feeling like they wanted to spend 5 days in the parks.
Exactly.
But I'm not sure that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely see.
Obviously it doesn't, because it didn't work out.
It was truly the pinnacle of Eisner.
Make your own magic. That was their...
Oh, that's cute.
That was their look. Okay, go on.
Make your own magic.
Don't rely on our magic that we spent billions on. Go on.
It was truly, I think, the peak of Michael Eisner being like, how do we capture everybody in every market and make them into Disney people? The same way that he was like, people who are going to zoos or Busch Gardens Tampa need to not go there. They need to go to Disney. People who are going to Hollywood or going to Universal Studios, they did not go to Universal Studios.
We're going to build MGM. Yeah, and sometimes that worked.
So this was a trend in the 90s.
Was it?
To like, yes.
I was unaware of this trend, I guess.
Yes. Well, we were a little young for this particular trend of like having an educational vacation.
Well, sure, but that's what Epcot's for.
I agree. That was our educational vacation, 100%.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a trend, and I think Michael Eisner was like, well, that's a trend that exists, and whether or not it's the perfect for the company, we need to get those people. Same reason there are nightclubs in Pleasure Island in this era. You know what I mean? Is it a great fit for the brand? No. Were there people going to Church Street Station in downtown Orlando and spending their money? Yes. So Disney wanted that money, you know? I think it was just as simple as that.
Oh, wow. It's almost like jealousy.
I think it is jealousy. I don't think it's like jealousy. I think it is directly jealousy.
It does sound like that. He's like, oh, you've got people coming to your place of business? I'm going to copy that.
Literally.
I'm going to copy that.
He did that so many times.
Yeah. I didn't think about it until you just mentioned it, but it's like the Backlot tour is copied. Animal Kingdom in its entirety is copied. Pleasure Island was copied. This was copied. Wild.
Yeah, he did not want to let any competition.
Yeah, this is it. You're only coming here.
Yeah. So now we think of the Disney bubble very fondly.
Yes.
We're like, oh, you get to stay in this one thing and it's got everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it was invented from this like competition crushing mentality, which is business, you know.
Yeah,
you want to
yeah.
make, you know, some people would say that's a stroke of genius.
And sometimes it worked out.
Exactly. Like some of the theme park ideas especially really worked out.
Right.
But then you get some things here and there.
Yeah.
Like Disney Quest. Like they were trying to take advantage of this like indoor arcade VR boom that was happening in shopping malls.
And even Pleasure Island to some extent.
It
worked for a while and then it became tapered. Kind of a problem. Yeah.
That's what happened here. That's really what happened here.
It is fascinating. Okay. You're right. It's not even necessarily a bad thing. It's just kind of crazy when you think about it that way.
Yeah.
All right, go on.
You really start to see the business behind the history in a lot of these projects. So anyway, in the year 2000, in the year 2000, where are we now? 2004? Yeah. So it's 2004, and now we officially have Disney Saratoga Springs Resort and Spa as we have it now. Mm-hmm. It's a DVC resort, and it is the 7th Disney Vacation Club resort, and it sits on the corpse of the Disney Institute. It's funny to see what became what from this. So like the clubhouse that is at Saratoga Springs now was like the huge event space and spa that was the Disney Institute's at the Disney Institute. So like it's a huge building and it feels too big to be, I've seen pictures, I've seen video, to be just the clubhouse for this resort. And the reason for that is because it was built to be this like Disney Institute building that had all these program rooms and an auditorium and all this stuff. So it's weird to walk around the resort because you really start to get a feel for the fact that it was kind of like co-opted into this thing that it really wasn't meant to be, because it doesn't feel like a normal resort when you're like walking around looking through pictures or video there. It's just got this very strange huge open air vibe because it was this
huge thing.
It's like if you were staying inside a building at Wide World of Sports or something.
Oh yeah.
You know, it just doesn't feel normal.
Good point.
But anyway,
which I guess will happen at some point.
I know, guessing. Right? Yeah, when are we getting sports resorts? So the theming of the newest version of the resort is inspired by the city of Saratoga Springs in New York, and that's where it gets its like color palette and architectural overlay from. And if you guys want to Google pictures of the town, you can definitely see how it inspired the landscaping, the color palette of the buildings. It definitely has a very northeastern, quaint vibe to it, which I think really fits the space that it's in.
They really like that. You know what I mean? Don't you feel like Boardwalk and Beach and Yacht Club are also, I mean, I know they are, Northeast. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I think that they really do enjoy that. I think part of the reason is because there are so many people from there that vacation to Walt Disney World that maybe like capitalizing on the charm of that.
Oh, bless me. You.
Capitalizing on the charm of that maybe appeals to them. Mm-hmm. And Disney also, I think they find inspiration in things that are low cost theming as well. So like a boardwalk, for example, is not particularly expensive to theme. And Saratoga Springs, I think it delivers charm without being particularly like grandiose. You know what I mean? It's not like the Grand Floridian or anything.
Yeah, I agree. And it does. It has an old school or old world charm to it that is undeniable. You know what I mean?
Right.
The people used to vacation to the Hamptons or whatever, and now you get that in Disney.
Right. It definitely does capture that vibe. It opened in 4 phases. So the 4 villa buildings are called Congress Park, and they have 184 Disney Vacation Home units. There are 8 villa buildings called the Springs and the Paddock, and there are 6 villa buildings called the Carousel and the Grandstand.
Okay.
Those were completed in 2007, so this was like a multi-year opening with multiple different phases. And then in phase 4, the treehouse villas reopened with 63 bedroom homes in 2009. They're elevated 10 feet off the ground, and they're along the Sassagoula River, like we talked about. And these have their own interesting history. We've discussed a
We
little
have
bit,
discussed it a little bit.
but at some point they were also home to, in the 90s, during a transitional period here, they were home to, um, you know how in Epcot they have these people who are from the different countries
Mhm.
that are hired to come in and be cultural representatives?
Right.
Guess where they lived?
Right.
They put them up in these treehouse
Right.
villas,
Amazing.
which is
They're
awesome.
international students, I think, that were coming for a work program.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really.
What an amazing experience that must have been.
I know, so cool. College program at one point, we're putting certain people in here, um, in between the times where it was kind of housing these people, and now you can stay here as part of Saratoga Springs
For a large amount of money.
for a large. We are constantly looking up how much these cost. We've done
Mhm.
that a bunch of times, and honestly, I think the conclusion of this is I would really like to stay here at some point. It is so much money.
Yeah, right, but you could split it because there's multiple rooms.
3-bedroom homes.
Yeah.
Yeah, since 2009, you could get in on this.
Yeah.
How fun. Some things I would recommend, even if you're not planning on staying at Saratoga, if you take the boat from Disney Springs to Port Orleans to get your beignets,
Uh-huh.
then take a look on the right hand side of the boat as you're cruising down, and you'll see these really cool treehouse villas along the water. And if you're like us, you're so curious about the histories of them, but now you'll know that they were built originally to be part of a residential community, and then
Eco-friendly.
yes, and then transitioned to be a resort, and then part of the Disney Institute, and now back to being a resort attached to the largest DVC resort, Saratoga Springs.
Yes.
What a crazy
Fascinating.
ride this little plot of land next to Disney Springs has had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does it, I don't know if I could look this up. I always hear Saratoga Springs and Old Key West combined kind of when people are talking about them. In your history search, did you find anything to suggest they were connected at all?
Oh, actually, that's a really interesting question. I don't think that they have ever been connected in the way that Port Orleans and Riverside and Port Orleans French Quarter basically operate as one resort. I don't think that's the case for this one.
So do you think it was part of the Disney Institute, Old Key West?
I do not think. I think Old Key West was its own project, and I think that Disney would sometimes market them together.
Yeah.
So when they were marketing the Lake Buena Vista Village, the Walt Disney World Village, Downtown Disney, Disney Springs, they would always be advertising as well for Saratoga Springs or whatever it was at the time, Disney Village.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Old Key West came about, it was kind of included in that same conversation of, look at these different amenities that you could stay at.
Okay, cool.
But in terms of operationally, I don't think they were ever really connected.
I guess in my brain, I was thinking it might be kind of like Pop Century and Art of Animation, where they took up the same space, they were historically connected, and then there was a disconnect when they put half of what was going to be Pop Century on hold because of 9/11, I believe.
Yep.
And then a decade later or so, I don't know these numbers off the top of my head, turned it into art of animation, which is completely different theme, but they still have like a historical connection.
Yeah.
And I guess I thought, because I always see Saratoga Springs and Old Key West marketed together, the pricing is similar,
Yeah.
the structure is similar, they're located right next to each other, that it might have something like that. But I think you're right. I don't think there is.
I think
it's a bit of a coincidence. I don't know.
They're a very similar offering to have right next to each other.
They are very similar. Yeah, they've got a different theme, but they're both heavily DVC. They're both
deluxe.
Yes, they're both deluxe. They're in the same location, so they kind of suffer the same consequence of that location. Although I don't think it's a bad location, but it doesn't have the
park access.
Yes.
Direct park transportation.
Right. And pricing wise, they're usually identical.
I know. So you would think they might as well have built one really big Saratoga Springs or one really big.
It's interesting.
Old Key West during the transition. I don't know.
I guess we'll have to find out when we do our Old Key West episode.
Ooh, yes. I bet there's some interesting history there too.
Yeah, and if you Google it, people are like, oh, this one versus this one. But you know what I mean? Which you only do. Yeah, but very, very interesting.
I see why they're Googling that.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It's a very...
Because I wouldn't know unless, I do know but yeah.
I know. They're not like me looking for the old auditorium from the Disney Institute. They're, wondering why these hotels are basically offering the same type of stay in the same location for the same price. Very, very interesting.
Like, is the difference only a New York theme versus a Key West theme?
Yeah, I would say there's maybe more variety of places to stay at, although I'm not 100% sure at Saratoga Springs, because it seems like they've just got a lot of different, like you've got these villas and these buildings that are like vacation home units, and the treehouse villas. It just seems like there's a more diverse portfolio of spaces that you can stay in. I don't know. These treehouse villas also add a very unique, aspects to the resort.
But that's not doing anything for you as a person staying there unless you're staying in them.
No, definitely not.
You don't even know they're there.
Like the Grand Destino Tower.
Yeah. Yes. Except I don't even think you could see them. Like if you check into regular Saratoga Springs, the tree houses are
in the wilderness.
Yeah, they're back there. They're along that boat route, like we've said, but it's not like you can take the boat from Disney Springs to Saratoga Springs and see them. You've got to take it to Port Orleans. So yeah, that doesn't do anything for you.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
There can be a little bit of cost difference, but they're very similar. In the grand scheme of Disney, they're very similar. It's like the difference between All-Star Sports and All-Star Movies, which there is a difference. There can be a difference. Sometimes there's not, but it's not usually huge.
Yeah. Also comes down to restaurant, perhaps. There's several restaurants in Saratoga. There's several restaurants in Old Key West. I know there's like a favorite restaurant in Old Key West, isn't there? Is that where what's that one?
Oh, what's that one called?
No, look it up.
Yeah, I've been there. I don't remember. You're looking it up.
Olivia's,
that's it.
Yeah,
no
I think
Auntie at all. Earlier, I was like, I think there's an aunt or something. Just Olivia's.
Perhaps.
But look at the decor there and tell me that doesn't look like it'd be like, oh, you're going to your auntie's. Well, I guess it's supposed to look like a local.
Oh yeah.
Like a local mom and pop.
Beachy.
Yeah, beach restaurant.
Beach town. Yeah,
there's pictures all over the wall of like random stuff.
Boats, fish, oars.
Yeah.
It's like a seafood bar and grill type vibe. It is cute though.
It is cute and pretty decently priced.
Yeah.
So, and it's got a bit of a following for if you're looking for a good meal at a good price on Disney property. This is one of the ones you'll hear about.
Right.
But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, and you also direct boat transportation to Disney Springs, which is great for Old Key West. And
really, you don't even need it. For both of those are so close to Disney Springs, walking is nothing.
100%. Especially Saratoga.
Saratoga.
But this too. Yeah. You could walk this 100%. Yeah. But the Saratoga one, if you're taking the boat to get to Port Orleans from Disney Springs, then you've basically already walked to Saratoga because
Yes.
it's right next to the docks.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's a little bit about the history of this particular Disney resort. Did you guys know about the Disney Institute and the history of Saratoga Springs and how it was originally going to be a master planned community that sat alongside what we now know as Disney Springs? I would love to hear if anybody stayed at the Disney Institute or took part in the educational programming.
I would too. Oh my gosh.
That
If you'd like to be a
sounds-
guest on if you've done this and you want to be a guest on our podcast, please send us a message.
Or at least leave us a comment or
Mhm.
something letting us know, because that is so fun. Just looking, when I was doing some research for this, I watched a commercial for the Disney Institute that showed
Oh.
some of the programming, and I was like, this feels like another dimension.
Yeah.
So crazy.
Yeah.
If you guys have enjoyed this episode and you would like to follow along for more of our in-park shenanigans, then you can find us on social media on Instagram and TikTok at Neverland Navco.
Yes, we also have an Etsy shop called Neverland Navigation if you want to check us out over there. And I'm just going to say one more time, I'm a free travel agent. So if you're thinking about taking any kind of trip, please send me an email at neverlandnavigationco@gmail.com so we can talk about it. I'll give you my contact information and we can talk about why you should book with me.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We are off to explore some treehouse villas, so we'll see you
on our next adventure.
Bye.